What's up, guys, and welcome to episode 4 of Brand Up Your Business podcast. I got a good friend, and I would say almost like a business companion slash we throw work back and forth together, Trevor Quinn. You want to kick this off, introduce yourself, and we can go from there?
So my name is Trevor Quinn, and I own Vaporlock Crawl Space Solutions. Um, I guess a quick nugget about how we got started. Back in 2017, my wife and I found out we're having our first baby, and realized very quickly that I did not have enough money to support a family and a growing family on the company salary. So I did what probably most people would do, and went to my boss and tried to lobby for a promotion or a like a raise. And he was like, "Hey, look, I agree, you need this and you deserve the promotion. However, the money's just not there." So rather than put my faith and my family's future in somebody else's hands, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna just take matters into my own hands and start a company. So I started doing like crawl space work back in like, I don't know, 2012, like on my dad's house and some other ones like on the side. And I had no desire to take that full time. But when I kind of felt like I had no choice, I was like, you know what, I've got the skill I can fall back on. And, back in 2017, 2018, there really wasn't a ton of competition in the upstate as far as like crawl space work goes. And then there's still not a ton right now, but you got the big three franchises here now. But back then it was pretty much blue ocean. There really wasn't a whole lot of other companies doing what we did. So we're really kind of one of the pioneers for the process and the way, like, crawl space science is not new, but the way that I feel like we approach things was different, and that's kind of what set us apart. So yeah, that's what happened. So we started doing crawl spaces back in 2018, and it's 2025, and we're still going strong. And we've added several other businesses and I guess lines of service underneath the Vaporlock brand since then.
Yeah, that's very cool. I know I see you guys a lot on social media, and you leverage like Facebook groups and word of mouth and referrals a lot too. Almost kind of how like we started our business. It's like that low cost, like high trustworthy form of like marketing and getting your name out there. It's almost like referral partners essentially. Like I know for the longest time, it seems like you and me, like with my pressure washing work, I don't like to do gutter cleanouts, and then like one of those arms of your business, you do gutter cleanouts. So like we'll always throw work around to like symbiotically help each other.
Exactly. Yeah, we rely really heavily on organic networking and word of mouth. I feel like we have a really high brand awareness and a really high reputation in the Greenville community, specifically because of that. We don't spend a ton of money on actual marketing or advertising. I would probably say 85 to 90% of our business legitimately comes from word of mouth referrals or just high brand awareness and traffic on our Google My Business page or our website itself.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and as far as the gutter cleaning stuff goes, yeah, you were our first gutter cleaning client, and it was just kind of a funny story when people always ask, because obviously everything rolls up under the crawl space brand for us. So when you roll up to a job site to work on a crawl space and you've got a truck with 40-foot ladders on top, they always ask, "Hey, if you're doing crawl spaces, why do you need ladders?"
That's
It's kind of
true.
an
Yeah.
interesting upsell. But it's all related. It's all water management. We're trying to keep it away from the house and not from under the home. But yeah, as far as the gutter cleaning stuff goes, we like Vaporlock and then Matt the driver got the team. We've bounced work back and forth. I don't know, probably since for 5 years, since like 2020, I think is when we started doing gutters with you guys.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so we're business partners, but we don't have equity in each other's business. We just have a vested interest in each other. So
Yeah.
it's a cool partnership.
Yeah. The equity we have is goodwill in each other.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it's just sweat equity. Yeah. Nothing tangible. Yeah. So it's great. And, obviously with Clay, we kind of have the same thing with him. It's awkward sometimes because I'm like, who do I recommend here versus here? So I kind of split Greenville down the middle, and I said, send stuff his way and send some stuff your way.
yep.
Um, but it's nice. I think that was one of the ways that we built our company, is like off of strategic partnerships. And I think it helps us and it helps you guys that you're partnering with another company in the upstate that is really high value and has such a good reputation for such a long time, to partner.
hmm
I'm like, hey, look, this is the company that we partner with, and this is who we recommend. I think it goes a long way for homeowners.
Yeah. Plus, like you're involved in a lot of like high ticket things, and you have a reputation that you want to protect there. Like if we're saying, hey, this guy's going to clean out your gutters, I know you're going to do a good job because you don't want your reputation to be pulled down by not cleaning gutters correctly when you're selling like a $30,000 vapor barrier for somebody's home, or
Exactly.
you're doing like stuff that's big enough where you're not going to like throw your reputation out the window over something small.
Right. And that's really where we've made our, like, that's like the cornerstone for us, is that we don't ever want to leave a job site. Like, we always want to leave it better than we found it. We don't ever want to leave things worse. For
Right.
the crawl space, it's pretty hard to screw that up because they're usually awful when we get there. But for the gutter cleaning stuff, they might have stuff hanging over the gutters, but if you go up there with a leaf blower and you blow out wet leaves and stuff, you're going to cake it all over the side of the house or the sidewalk or the driveway or the cars or the patio. So we want to make a point to clean up everything after we're done. And sometimes it's a simple $150 gutter cleaning job, which is not, a whole lot to a small business like us, but to the average homeowner spending $150, you know, once or twice a year, and that can make a difference. And the last thing they want to do is, spend their hard-earned money to have you not do it correctly or not do it completely, or, do it and then hurry out and leave a mess. So we just want to make sure that we're putting everything into every single job, whether it's a $150 gutter cleaning or it's a $15,000, crawl space encapsulation. It doesn't really matter what the project is. We're going to give 100% of our focus to every single client that we're working on at that time.
Yeah. Do you ever like cross sell stuff? Say you're going in on a gutter cleaning job and then, hey, by the way, like we can fix your crawl space, or like do you do like involved with like roof stuff or gutter guards? Are there other areas that you're able to like go in on like a low ticket and then like upsell or cross sell other things that you provide as well?
Yeah, a lot of time it happens naturally in conversation. Sometimes, we work with homeowners that we rarely ever meet. Like, they've got a second home here, like up on Lake Kiwi, that we've ever never actually met them face to face. But for the most part, homeowners, they want to get to know you. They want to know who they're in business with. They want to know who they're sending their money to. And so, like I said, sometimes it really happens naturally. You show up to clean someone's gutters, and then all of our stuff says, Vaporlock Crawl Space Solutions. So they're, hey, what's up with this? Like, what else do you guys do?
Right.
And then we start listing it off. So yeah, for gutters, we do gutter cleaning, installation, and maintenance. So if I show up for a gutter cleaning job and they're interested in gutter guards or gutter, leaf protection, we can do that. But if they've got, no downspouts or broken downspouts or elbows, we can fix all of that stuff as well. But also, we can install gutters. So if they want, if they have 5-inch gutters, they're falling off, they want, new 6-inch gutters, we can install gutters as well. We do roofing as well too. That's under a separate company. That's under Viking, but it's the same premise. We're on top of house cleaning gutters or installing gutters. I'm going to notice the roof. So 90% of the time, like, hey, look, we're up here. We'll go ahead and give you a free roof inspection. If we find any damage, we can go back and work with your insurance company, and then we can see where we go from there. And then the crawl space is as well. If I notice the house has vents on the side of the house, I can ask them, hey, look, we also own a crawl space company. When's the last time you had your crawl space inspected? And we just offer them a free, crawl space inspection or consultation on the spot. And usually the work does, speaks for itself. If you've done a good job cleaning someone's gutters, they're going to trust you to do the other thing. If you've done a bad job cleaning someone's gutters, they're not going to trust you to do any more work.
Yeah.
So like it's really easy if you are constantly having that high attention to detail and that high level of care. It translates over across all the business units that we run. I said, it's not an easy upsell, but it's an easy add-on to say, hey, look, we've already done this with you. What about this?
Yeah. Very much so. It is cool because like I have you ever spent like money on Google or like money on paid advertising here and there? Or is most of it have just been like with strategic partnerships with like local service based businesses and like, hey, this is the value I provide, this is what we can do. And then you've kind of grown your business from there.
So organically through strategic partnerships for the first several years, but we've started to invest a little bit more money on like the Google ads.
Yeah.
We don't really do a whole lot of Facebook ads. Like, I've done some research on it, and I haven't found that for us that's the best return for our investment. So,
Yeah.
Google ads, pay-per-click ads, and targeted ads, and mailers and things like that. Is kind of where we're starting to focus next.
Yeah.
I really haven't been super sold on the Facebook stuff, at least for us. For our niche, I just don't think that's where we're going to hit. There's a lot of traffic that I see on Facebook. I get everybody else's, suggested or targeted ads because I'm a crawl space company and I'm constantly, looking up and Googling things. So I hit their targeted ads.
Yep.
So I see that it's just really heavily trafficked. I feel like our money would go further through Google.
Especially too, if you said there's a lot of like bigger
Mm-hmm.
corporations and franchises in the mix where they can dump a ton of money and you don't really want to compete with
Exactly.
them on that.
Well, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to compete with them on that. We're a small family-owned business, and we've been doing this for 7 years now. But still, like our pockets aren't as nearly as deep as the three big like corporate franchises. So they have that big financial backing, and they can spend more money on stuff like that. And I know my company, and I kind of know where we're going to hit and where we're going to miss. And I know that us trying to go toe to toe in a spending battle on marketing and advertising, that's just not where we're going to hit our sweet spot.
Right.
I'm pretty frugal and like on like a profit and loss statement. I know exactly where the money can go, where the thing I can stretch it the furthest because I've got a background in marketing. So like I know, hey, if I focus over here versus over here, where they're not already focusing, I can take that market share, and that's going to give us a higher cost benefit analysis versus dumping money into Facebook like everybody else is doing.
Yeah. So it is interesting because like I have a college degree. I did corporate America. I did like the big B2B sales, corporate sales. And it sounds like you have similar experience there. And then you made a jump as like, hey, I want to add a secondary stream of income here. I want to build a business and I'm leveraging like that corporate mindset. You said your degree's in marketing, right? You said?
Yeah,
Or
business and marketing,
business
and then
marketing.
minor law. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so like you're aware of like you're thinking more in depth than most of these like kind of blue collar like tradesmen who may not have that experience, and then you're able to like kind of take what you know that works in corporate America and then apply that to your small business, and it seems like that's probably something overlooked that a lot of guys in the trades don't necessarily know. They're so stuck in the like, hey, I'm the technician, like I do the greatest quality work, and they miss out on like the big picture, the financial bones of their business and like what to do. So
Yeah, it's kind of like in sports. You can have a great football player who makes a really terrible coach, and you can have a
it's true.
fantastic coach who is not a great football player.
Yep.
And so sometimes you hit it on both sides. Like you are a great player, but you're also a great coach. But a lot of times, yeah, there's owner operators that are really good at what they do, but they need a little bit of help. And some like that's why you hire like a CEO or COO, and you handle the operations, and they handle the business side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for us, it was a little different. I had a really strong background in business,
Mm-hmm.
big business, and I've done a lot of white collar corporate level stuff that I had a ton of experience on these, multi-million dollar companies, and I can do their finance and business and accounting process. Then I can easily manage my small business. So it's the same principle, just a smaller scale. So I was really comfortable doing the business side of it, and I knew that I could do the technical side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came time to put them both together, I was like, look, I've got this. I don't need to hire out. I can do this. And where I'm missing, I can hire out for that. But for us, we didn't have to hire out for the business side of it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because I feel like especially nowadays, like the trades are getting popular. You see these guys
Mm-hmm.
are like, oh, everybody is like BlackRock is investing and private equity firms are investing in all these
Yep.
like small trades and like HVAC companies or like they're doing so. So like a lot of these like owner operator minded guys, they think, hey, I've built this business, but if they're the only ones doing it, they've essentially like built themselves in a job. So like
Yeah.
that corporate mindset of like, hey, I need to like learn enough of the information, learn enough of how to do the work, and then delegate it down essentially, and then kind of manage it and control
Yep.
expectations. And that kind of is what I see on guys like you, me, and then we even had Bob on the show the other day with like his engineering background, where like he's like, hey, I know the spreadsheets, I know how my business is supposed to flow. It's one of those deals where it's like, hey, we're focusing on like building that business as opposed to like being in the business.
Yeah. There's a difference between working in the business and working on the business.
Yeah.
And I was super guilty of that. I think you and I had a lot of conversations about this a couple years ago that I was like, I'm hitting a wall.
Yeah.
Um, because I was doing so much of it and I was such a control freak. I wanted to handle the business, the marketing, the sales, the ordering, the distribution, and then the booking of the jobs, the installation of the jobs. And I was overseeing every single point of it. And we had great quality control because I was on top of everything. Hold on, let me
Yes.
turn that off.
You got it.
Um, we had great quality control because I was able to put my fingers on every step of the process. But then I realized very, very quickly that it has like, you know what? If I am constantly doing all this stuff, I don't have time to actually grow it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I took a step back and I was like, this is the max amount of jobs I can do at this pace because I'm not hiring out. When we were busy with gutter cleaning, gutter installs, and crawl space and insulation work, I was like, I've got to put somebody over each business unit and try to free up some of my time, and I can still work in them, but I'll be less involved. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Is I'm trying to take more steps back. And we've hired basically a field supervisor or like an operations manager for each unit. So the crawl space side has one, the installation side has one, and then the gutter cleaning has like a manager, and then the gutter install has a manager.
Yeah.
So that's freed up a ton of time for us and for me specifically to take a step back and say, hey, look, this is where we're hitting, this is where we're missing. And if you hire somebody and it's not going to be a perfect fit, nobody's going to care for your business the way that you do. But I think if you find somebody that you trust enough to run that side of the business and you train them well enough and you treat them well enough, they're going to continue to work with you. So we've been really fortunate to have had zero turnover, in our higher level positions. On the lower side, on the tech side, we've lost some guys, but on actual business managers, none of them have left. So right now we're projecting pretty good numbers for 25.
That's cool. Yeah. I've kind of noticed that too, because like you and me, we both started out like owner operating it, doing it all like that control freak, like, hey, our quality is what's like selling everything. And that required us to think that we had to be like all hands on and like no delegation. And then we both kind of evolved past that stage where like we've hired people, I've got a couple employees and trucks, and then we almost take more of like a managerial like oversight viewpoint of things. And I've noticed that like yes, my techs may have errors here and there. Say I got a new guy and they're not like up to speed with things. But as long as you're still like responsive to the customer and care, it seems as if people throw you more slack than if you're doing the work and you kind of did a shoddy job.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like when you're burning the candle at both ends and doing every aspect of the business, even if your level of care and your attention to detail is there, you're going to be so tired and burnt out that you're going to miss things.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's harder to come back from that when you're the owner operator and you're making mistakes versus, hey, this is a guy, like a newer guy, he's training. Here's what he did. It's a teaching moment. I'll address it. Thanks for bringing it up, or however it happened. I feel like there's a little bit more understanding, but also depends on how you approach it. But yeah, 100% agree. I think with employees, you have a little bit more slack sometimes.
It's like almost like the customer like views you more credibly because you have a business with employees beneath you. Like I've had customers reach out, hey, look, I noticed like this was missed here. Say we're pressure washing and like a spot was missed. And then they're like, I don't want to get your guy in trouble. He was great, but here, like this is the solution. As opposed to like in the past, if I would have missed a spot, they would have sent me a picture. They're like, hey man, you missed a spot. Like
Yeah,
they're almost like
you need to
framing it.
fix it.
They're almost framing it as like, hey, I appreciate like the guy doing a great job. I don't want to get him in trouble. So it seems like they let us off a little bit easier than if it was like, oh, I'm doing all the work. So like I almost view it like it helps our brand and like our business be more of an authority when customers like hold you to like, oh, okay, you got employees, you got guys. There's more understanding there than it was just like me doing everything, me burnt out. Like that's gonna pass through on the customer. They're gonna be like, oh, he's just too busy, like making all the money himself.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree with that.
That's just one thing I've noticed, and it seems as especially like with scaling and growth, like in the beginning I was like, oh, I can make X amount of money, and then like I could work a little bit harder, and then I could like cut like my expenses, and then I'm growing my profitability. But like scaling into multiple trucks and doing stuff like that, I was like, whoa, I can grow that revenue past what I could ever grow my revenue if it was just me doing the work. And
Yeah, that was our biggest concern, is that taking a revenue hit, because I was like, look, if we're not having to hire out all this help, our actual profit margin on jobs was greater, but the amount of jobs we were able to hit in the month or a quarter was significantly less. So
yeah,
your like if you just do a basic cost benefit analysis to bring somebody on to help ease up some of that time, and even if you just had 20% growth in jobs, you're going to make more money even if you're paying somebody. So that's kind of what we looked at. And that's what it was, very easy decision. Like once I looked at the numbers, I was like, hey, look, we're losing money by putting me in charge of all of this stuff. I've got to take a step back because we're not going to make any more money.
yeah. That's that was definitely kind of like a pivotal thing. And then just like being okay with buying your time back. It's like, hey, I like I'm able to do three things instead of just doing one thing. So like,
Yeah,
do I want to do three things really well, or do I want to do one thing that I think is exceptionally well, but I'm really hamstringing myself, and then I'm going to burn out?
right.
And it's kind of like the long term approach that you and I have taken, as opposed to like, oh, I'm the best guy in town. I know, like, because I'm doing everything. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's like the demise of a lot of these guys I see, where they hit it so hard and they're so strong for like 4 or 5 years, and then they disappear.
And we really haven't had a whole lot of pushback. And there's a couple guys that we're really involved in the front of the process, and it really just depends on who shows up to the initial conversation or consultation. It could be Tyler, it could be Nate, or it could be myself. So, and I could be there from the beginning. It really just depends on the scheduling, on who's on what side of town that day. But I only had one customer pushback. He's like, "So who's actually doing the install?" And I was like, "Well, it's going to be overseen by my field supervisor and one of the install teams. But my lead tech is going to be there, so I have full confidence in all of them." He goes, "Well, I thought you were going to do it." I said, "Unfortunately, that's just not how this job works out." Now, sometimes I'm involved in stuff like after the hurricane, we were so busy on the roofing side, the gutter side, and the foundation crawl space side that I had to start doing actual install work because we were just so behind. But right now, like I'm involved in stuff, but I'm not the one who's there who's doing all the work anymore. Like I not to sound arrogant, like I don't have the time to sit there and spend 10 hours on a crawl space install anymore. It's just not how we're built.
Right.
But only one customer is pushed back. Like everything else, they get it. Like that's not how business is done. You don't walk into the Apple store and then see Tim Cook selling iPhones. That's just not what he does.
Right. Or like, it's funny because they use the expression of like a small business owner makes one mistake and their brand is tarnished, but then you go to McDonald's and they can never get your order right, and you still keep going back to
Yeah.
McDonald's. It's like they understand that McDonald's is a big organization, and like it's run efficiently on a high level, but like you're going to run into issues on the low level. So why are people holding us as, like, say you're an owner operator, like, oh, this guy's terrible, he's out of it's like, to me, like having those employees almost buffer you. And like, if you can step in as the boss and you can step in and say, hey, look, I'm the owner of this business, these are my guys, like, and approach the situation correctly, it seems almost as there's more value in like your brand itself than if it was just you doing all this stuff. Like,
Yeah, I love that comparison to McDonald's. I 100% agree. I think not a power move is probably not the best way to phrase it, but like, yeah, if one of your guys makes a mistake and it automatically gets escalated to you, the owner, I'm like, oh, okay, you know what, there's a mistake, but now the owner is talking to me to fix it. I feel like it's a better look than you making a mistake and fixing it yourself. But so if one of your guys makes a mistake and you come in and like own it, take accountability. So like, there's guys that for us that have made plenty of mistakes on stuff, and we're super big on accountability. And the last thing I'm going to do is make my guys look bad in front of a homeowner. Like, I'm going to stand in front of them and we're going to address it. I'm not going to, run you. I'm not going to rake you over the coals, but I'm also not going to, I'm not going to bash them in front of the homeowner. I think that's what helps. I think it's a bad look if, a guy makes a mistake and you come there like, yeah, he's awful. He does this, that. Like, okay, well, if he's not so bad, like, why are you still employing him? So I think it's
yeah,
also how you treat it.
that's true. I think too, like, everybody remembers, like, you have a bad job in corporate America and your boss throws you under the bus. Like,
Yeah.
and then like you're saying, you're lowering your value as a company, and you're like, wait, so if you say this guy's horrible, why do you employ him? Why is he a representation of your company? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah, mistakes happen, stuff like that, but it's like you got to step up as a boss and represent your company, represent your brand, and not just be like, well, I'm the boss, he sucks, like, get out of the way. Which I feel like that could be how people do things nowadays, who aren't really the best minded for leadership positions. Or it's like the difference between a manager and a leader. And like,
Yeah.
we both have corporate American experience, and some people have just been in a position for 5 years plus, and therefore they're deemed a manager, but they're not worthy of that title.
Yeah. Um, I agree. It's just it's not there's not a one size fits all approach to it. I think there's definitely a lot of trial and error
Mm.
when you're trying to hire somebody because it's a fit for you. And we view everything as a partnership. Even like when it comes to our employees, like everything is based on a partnership. It needs to be mutually beneficial. But if it's working for me, but it doesn't work for them, okay, then we need to talk about, okay, so where are we hitting and where are we missing, and why is this not a good fit for you, and like what could we do better? Because at the end of the day, if I don't have people on my team that I can trust, then we're not going to be able to get anything done. So it's a pretty easy second step for us to turn around and say, hey, look, this is where we're going to go from here. And we're pretty good with our feedback with our team,
Yeah.
just for that reason specifically.
So like we both kind of like we've steered this into like, okay, we built the business, we got our branding, we have plenty of leads coming in, and then like how like it's almost like an operations focused podcast here. We're both talking about like, all right, we've evolved from that owner operator stage to like the owner stage essentially. How do
Yeah.
you hire and like do you create a culture, which I would loop it into like, hey, brand up? It's like that's a representation of your brand and your company. So like what criteria do you have when you hire people? What emotion and stuff are you trying to have in your team, and then how they interact with customers to like give that customer experience? Because like customer experience is a huge aspect of your brand and of your business.
Mhm. So a lot of our employees, specifically the guys that are in like management positions, they're former military. So Nate, who runs the crawl space side, he's a former combat Marine. And then I've got some other guys that were, Army, Air Force. I think the only person I don't have is Coast Guard. But we've had really good success hiring military guys just because they're very disciplined and diligent in like that working aspect of it. But for the most part, they're all very coachable, and they understand, accountability. But for me, accountability works both ways. I can't hold you accountable if you can't hold me accountable. So it's a two-way street for us that I want to be able to say, hey, look, I'm very approachable, but also like I'm going to call you out when you're wrong, but I'm going to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
But in return, if I do something wrong, I want you to call me out just the same, but we're going to do it respectfully. So that's really how we approach things. And there's been some people that we brought on that just didn't work, and they've kind of fizzled out for whatever reason, whether they didn't like to do the work or I just didn't like how they interacted with customers. There's definitely been people we've let go. Just it goes back to accountability. Like if you say you're going to do one thing and you don't do it, and when I check you on it and you double down and try to say like, no, I did this. Like when I've got absolute proof that you didn't do it, then we're done. Like we're not going to do that. And I'll give second chances if they're due. But if I try to check somebody on something and they double down, like no, this is how we did it and this is correct, and I've got photo evidence of how something was left, and like we're gonna revisit this. And if I don't like how the conversation goes, then we're just gonna call it quits. I think um, I don't. There's a lot of people talk about hiring slow and firing fast. I don't really love that. I think every person deserves enough chances depending on the situation. Like depending on how you handle things,
Yeah.
um, really speaks volumes to me. Versus I don't care if you made a mistake. It's how you deal with the mistake. Like if you make a mistake and you own it and you try to rectify it before it becomes an issue. I have so much respect for that versus somebody who makes a mistake and tries to double down. Like no, that wasn't us.
Yeah, 100%. And our world too, it's like machines have issues, jobs can be more difficult than normal, people could be difficult. It's like you're going to run into diverse, or you're going to run into like issues all day long. How are you managing like your emotions, and how are you like dealing with problems and solving problems without having to call me, and you're able to do it with the customer, and you're able to do it like kind of with a smile on your face? It's like every day there's going to be something that goes wrong in our business, and it's probably same with yours. And like you got to find somebody who's not going to, oh, I'm wrong, like, and get poo poo about it, or not take ownership of it and just move forward and understand, like, hey, look, like the objective is to go forward. Like, I need you to row the boat forward with me, and I'm not going to be on the jobs with you. You're going to have to come up with like solutions to this on your own. And then,
Mhm.
like you were saying something about like you like the idea of like a partnership mindset, and you want
Yeah.
I have guys who are like, hey, yeah, you don't have equity in my company, but you like we have a partnership, and hey, you make money of a percent of revenue. So the more money we make, the more efficiently we can be, the more money's in your pocket. And it's one of
Yeah.
those things too that like they take a sense of ownership and pride of that, and they're not just saying, oh, I'm milking the clock for an hourly rate. It's like, hey, if you want to smoke it and kill it, you get all the tips, you get a nice percentage of revenue of production. So therefore, like it's going to require that certain personality who's going to want that role, as opposed to somebody who's lazy, who's just going to milk the clock. Like I try to really weed out people who are lazy and not wanting to like almost be like an entrepreneur themselves, and
Yeah.
like you want to almost view these businesses as like, hey, I want to like mentor somebody who's not aware of this type of business, and then like get them up to speed, almost to like create their own business. And I'm like, hey, I want to like load you with all the information that I have on what I'm doing, and then if you want to take ownership and do your own thing, that's one thing. But like while you're working with me, you're gonna have to like your own ownership mindset, and you're gonna have that sense of pride as like, hey, we're all in this together, as opposed to me like talking down to you and like, oh, this is all your fault. That's like that's like a no-go at my place. So it's like, hey, if that's how you are here, you don't fit in and you probably should find another job.
Yeah, and it's pretty apparent when somebody's not going to fit in. I think for us, we're very upfront with stuff. Like there's, I think what makes my relationship with the guys work is that there's nothing that I'm going to ask them to do that I haven't already done.
It's true.
I've done everything in the crawl space side, everything on the gutter side, on the roofing side. There's nothing that I'm going to ask you to do that I won't do, or that I haven't done, or that I won't go out there and do now. Like when we were short, like I was in the crawl space pulling out insulation, putting in poly, taping seams, digging trenches for French drains, and I'm carrying stuff out to the dumpsters. Like so, there's nothing that I'm going to ask you to do for then that I wouldn't do. So I feel like it looks better for me that I'm not just going to sit in the office and bark orders at them to go do, because I understand it. Like nothing that we do is glorious. We work under houses or on top of them. Like it's either hot and sweaty on top of a house, or you're out in the elements, so you're freezing off, hanging off a ladder,
Yep.
or you're disgusting crawl space, pulling out old insulation, or moldy plastic. So nothing that we do is pretty, but I'm not going to ask you to do something that I won't do myself. And I feel like that goes back to the accountability point for us.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah. And two, like you said, my business, your business, they're not really like pretty businesses. It's almost like dirty jobs.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then like we're
Dirty
creating
jobs.
that culture, which is like your brand, and that's attracting your customers to you, and that's also attracting your employees to you. So it's,
Yep.
I think like that transparency of your user experience, your customer experience, and like your employee experience is all that same energy. And then once you
Yep.
create like an alignment there, like everybody's working together and you have a great company.
Mhm.
Because like, yeah, you're fighting raccoons and snakes in somebody's crawl space. That's not really
Yeah.
something you're seeing somebody like knock on your door to say, oh, I want to do that. But if you create that culture behind yourself and they want to work for
Yeah.
you and they're like excited about like, hey, we get a new experience, a new customer, a new house, like that's something that like if you guys are on that same wavelength and level, then they're gonna have a sense of pride in it, and it's gonna help you grow your business, and it's gonna be an enjoyable working experience for them.
Yeah, like we try to make it as fun as possible, and obviously, like I can try to motivate people with my words as much as I want to. But at the end of the day, people are ultimately motivated by financial gain. So
Yep.
we have it structured to, if you aren't here for the right reasons, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
If you're here to ride the clock and just get a paycheck, this isn't the place for you. You're going to make so much more money anywhere else. But if you come here and you work hard and you do what you're supposed to, we have a pretty good incentive structure for the guys. Like, look, if you have X amount of jobs scheduled and you get them done before time, then there's a bonus. Or if we allot, 12 hours for a crawl space and they're done in 9, then hey, look, you're making more money than you would have. So you're going to work faster, you're going to make more money. Now, if you work faster and the job's not complete, okay, then we're going to talk about, okay, here's what you did, here's what you should have done. So it's all coaching moments. But yeah, I feel like motivating them financially by the way that we do our payout structure makes us have a little bit more leeway. And people riding the clock, we definitely had our fair share of guys that had done that, but they did not stick around very long.
Yeah, that's kind of the same deal as us. Like I will compensate based upon revenue. So say like weekly revenue, you get a certain percentage of that. As opposed to like, oh, you're gonna make more money if you mess up a job and you're going back and I'm still paying you your hourly rate. I was like, hey, you're gonna go out and fix that on the dime that you're already paid because you're paid based upon the percentage of job completion.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if you want to work 6 days a week in our busy season, you're gonna make really good money. Or if you want to dial it back and work 4 days a week or 3 days a week, you'll make that same fair percentage. It just might not be worth your time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely it's funny in the beginning. It's like, oh, how do I get business? How do I get business? And then when you get the business in, you almost have to like allow your company to have more space and improve your operations and hire out and scale so you can allow all that business to flow through. And I think it's overlooked because people think, oh, like marketing, marketing, marketing. But once you get to a certain size, if you don't have the operations to support that marketing, you're never going to grow past a certain point.
Yeah, getting the business is great, but you still got to be able to get out there and do it.
And I remember like I shifted my marketing from like, oh, Matt the driveway guy, me doing all the work, to then having like the focus is on my employees, the multiple trucks. And then we started attracting bigger projects. We started getting commercial calls. We had guys who were like, oh, you do commercial now. You can do a hotel. You can do like 100,000 square foot industrial building. Like more opportunities, larger opportunities came to us once we were showcasing like, hey, I got another truck here. I essentially like I build it and then it came. It's like that expression, like if you build it, they will come. It's
Yeah.
almost like a true thing. It's like investing in your operations is that next step after investing in your marketing and branding. And then like your brand shifts to be more legitimate, to be a bigger operation, and you get bigger tickets.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You have to have like wide angle lenses, because if you become super hyper focused on one thing, that specific issue or spot might be great, but if you're not stepping back and really taking a look at what is next, or thinking one or two steps ahead, I think you kind of get stuck in that rut. So yeah, if you're really hyper focused on marketing and you get 10, 20, 30 new leads, but you don't have the bandwidth or the infrastructure to go out there and get them scheduled and completed in a timely manner, then you're just going to lose them. Like, hey, we called Matt or we called Trevor to come do this, and 2 months went by and he never called us back, so we just called somebody else. So it's great to get them in there, but you still got casting a net, catching all those fish is great, but you got to get them in the boat.
Exactly. Like there's got to be a way to process what you're doing, and it is. I've noticed that too. Like especially in my space, you see like the owner operator minded. Oh, It's like they wear it as a badge of honor. They're like, I'm 2 months booked out. I'm like, first off, you're probably not. Second of all,
Yeah.
those people aren't going to call you back. Like we notice in our business, if our operations are like more than 2 weeks out, we're losing those. We're losing those booked appointments probably 50% of the time. Somebody's going to be like, oh, I called somebody else. They can fit me in. Like they'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, put me on the schedule, and then they're going to go back and search it, and they're going to see, hey, who can I find that's going to backfill this faster? So like by working on that infrastructure, building up our operations, like we're able to hammer much more and provide more value to these customers because we're not booked out a month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like
people,
that's one of the first questions we get asked, like when a customer calls us, is like, "Hey, how far out are you guys?"
yeah,
And generally, we're about 2 weeks out on just about everything,
mm-hmm.
unless there's no specific issue, or if it's like blown in insulation. Sometimes that's a little bit further, but for the most part, we're about 2 weeks out on everything. And sometimes we can even get people same day, and that blows their mind. I had a lead from you a couple weeks ago that we were able to get them scheduled and completed within a day. And he's like, I was really shocked because everybody else was like 2 and 3 weeks out. I was like, yeah, well, we were in the neighborhood today.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have multiple trucks, you have multiple people out there. You could say, hey, call your guy. We want to squeeze another job in today. You want to make a little bit extra money. Like we
Yes.
have the resources to be able to do this.
Yeah, yeah, that's where that is a win. And sometimes it's hard to see it on the balance sheet to have that many trucks, but when you can do that, it's such a huge asset.
Yeah, that's I think that was a huge thing for me too. Cause like you said, you think, oh, how am I gonna afford this? Because you're only thinking with that limited lens of one truck, me doing all the work. And then it almost takes, like you said, the wide lens to, all right, I don't know where this is going, but like I'm just allowing myself to essentially like catch more fish, have a bigger net. And then it seems as if like it'll fill it up like entropy or something where like you're allowing more to come to you than if you're just like I'm super fixated on this one little thing, and you get like almost a shiny object syndrome with stuff, and you're not able to accept a lot more. Like it's scaling the business, growing, having more trucks, like you're getting multiple trucks on the road, you're getting more customer contact points, you're getting more referrals. It's like there's a lot of things that go into it besides like, oh, my one marketing thing. It's like, hey, you're at the gas station with 3 trucks. Somebody's going to call you versus that one guy in one
Yeah,
truck.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
It's
but
that curb
yeah,
appeal.
right. So, I guess, is there anything you'd like to talk about here? We're at like 38 minutes. So,
Um, Trying to think of other talking points. I think so. When we got started, I know the barrier to entry thing was one of the most difficult, hills to get over, because there wasn't a whole lot of competition in the upstate for us for
mm-hmm.
what we did specifically, just because the awareness for like crawl space science and crawl space health really just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
It was out there, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is like today. So we focused on being cheaper than everybody else, and that is such a terrible model to grow a business. It's fine to start,
Right.
but very quickly you have to, okay, like you can be the cheaper guy, but that's only going to get you so far, and then you're going to get to a point where you hit that wall. So I think refiguring our business model after we started getting a couple jobs and getting our name out there, and once our brand awareness caught back up, like, okay, you know what, now we have enough of a reputation that we can set our prices to the point that we're not going to get rich off of one job,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to keep us in business and help fund the company to continue to grow. And that's kind of where we were. That's kind of where we're at. And now we're kind of, we've got a strong brand. We can kind of coast off of that And we get pretty consistent phone calls, and especially on Facebook, we get our name gets shouted out for just about everything that we do, and I love it. And there's 90% of the time it's homeowners and customers we worked with before that are still out there, throwing our name out there. For the gutter side, we have repeat business. We do a lot of our customers once or twice a year, and we have very low turnover on that side of it. But for the crawl space side, once you install a crawl space, other than basic maintenance, like you don't have them as a customer again. Like if you do it right the first time, there's zero reason for you to come back there and visit that crawl space outside of, scheduled or regulatory maintenance. So for us to have those customers and homeowners continue to recommend us on Facebook, to me means the world, because we've only dealt with you one time for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and then that
Yep.
was it. And you've made enough of a lasting reputation, and for them that they're going to tell their friends and family and neighbors, or if they see a post on Facebook, hey, does anyone know a crawl space company? They're more willing to shout that out. So for us, shifting to focusing on our image versus rather than the bottom dollar has helped us continue to grow. Now 7 years later.
That's awesome. I'm gonna flip our screens to vertical so we can make some kind of like reels here. That way it looks better on Instagram. And
Okay.
then I would say to your point too, like when you shift, like because in the beginning everybody's like, oh, the $99 guy. It's funny in the pressure
Yeah.
washing space. It's like, oh, I'll do everything for $100. Just let me do it. You're almost attracting a bad customer. Like you're attracting that bottom feeder, low value customer where they're like, hey, I'm gonna nitpick you to death because I don't want to spend $100.
Yeah, I refuse to get into bidding wars. And when I first started, I was so hyper focused on being more cost effective than my competition.
Yeah.
And I would allow myself to get kind of stuck in that rat race. The homeowner would come back and be like, hey, look, this other company, they said that they can do this for $1,800. Can you do 17? And I have no desire to do that. But before I would do that, and I would take massive hits on our profit and loss statement, and we're doing these jobs for next to nothing, and the homeowner's winning.
Right.
My company's not winning. The other company's not winning. And so, yeah, there's plenty of companies that we're in competition with. But at this point now, and I'm very upfront with homeowners now, I'll say, hey, look, I'm not the cheapest. I'm not the most expensive, but I can just about guarantee I'm going to be the most honest contractor you've ever talked to. We're going to be very upfront about everything that is and isn't wrong with your crawl space, and things that you can do now and things that you need to do now, or things that you can wait on. Because the last thing I want to do is tell you, hey, this is what is wrong with your crawl space. It's going to cost this much. And then have another company and have them come out and be like, no, that's absolutely wrong. This and this and this can wait. And I don't want to be that guy. So I'm not trying to, make myself rich off of one single project. We're here to make enough money off of one project. And so that way my company wins, but we're here to solve your problem, but also not price gouge you. So that way you're still winning.
Right.
Um, we view everything, like I said, we go back to how we hire employees. Everything for us is viewed as a partnership. My relationship with the homeowner is still a partnership. You're contracting us to do a job and solve a problem for you. And at the end of the day, if I haven't solved that problem and you pay me a ton of money for it, then I've failed you. So
Yeah.
that's where we focus now on is, hey, look, we're going to solve your problem and we're going to try to do it, in a cost effective manner. But at the end of the day, we're still a business. We've got to make money. But I don't get bidding wars. Like if they come back and like, hey, this other company is $1,000 cheaper than you. Well, if you're motivated by cost, then we're not the guy.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
also too, like if they're gumming at you, hey, if you can beat this other company at $1,000, you get the job. Well, I'm
yeah,
sure the other company isn't the same value as you or me. So if they were the same or better value and they cut your cost by $1,000, why are they even calling me back? And
right.
that's one of those reframes. It's like, hey, Mr. Customer, like if $1,000 is the difference between me and them, obviously you see more value in me because there's $1,000 that you have to pay more, and you're still considering me in this equation. Like you would just
Yeah.
go with this guy if he sold you at a cheaper price point.
Right. Well, and I've had people that have framed it exactly like, hey, look, we really like you. We like your company. We like what you said, but they're so much cheaper. And so that's, I'll go back to look, if I've given you our best price. If I could cut $1,000 off the price, that means I was lying to you from the beginning. That means
Yes.
I literally padded my margins $1,000 extra than I should have. So to me, I was like, one, I can't do that. And if any company can legitimately come to you and say, hey, I could beat them by $1,000, they were price gouging you from the beginning. And we don't do that. We've never done that. And, our price model is set up so that way my techs don't go out there to upsell stuff. We sell things for the most part at cost. If a dehumidifier costs us, $1,000, we sell it for $1,000. Now we charge to install the material, but we don't make any extra money on selling a 90 pint dehumidifier versus a 70 pint dehumidifier. And I wanted to control that from the beginning. So when I went back to my guys, I said, look, there's zero incentive for anybody here to upsell any material that a homeowner does not need. Because if you sell a 70 pint versus 90 pint, what you make is you make zero more dollars. Like
Yeah,
it's so what it costs. So we're spending more money, but we're not making more money. Now, if they
exactly.
need the 90 pint, they need the 90 pint. But I'm not going to sell, a 20 mil vapor barrier versus a 12 mil vapor barrier just because it's a higher cost. Because there's no reason for them to upsell materials unless it's absolutely necessary. So I think for us, that's another one of the places where we really see that we're beating these competitions because they're upcharging for materials, and we can come in and not. We're still winning the cost battle on certain aspects just because there's no incentive for us to sell something that doesn't need to be sold. Now, there's definitely companies out there that do similar products to like similar type work to us. They might be cheaper than us, but they may not have the same overhead.
Yeah.
But the same thing with us and the big three, corporate companies. Like they have a higher overhead. I'm usually cheaper than them because they have more. They have more costs. Their operating cost is substantially higher than us.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, and too, like you said, it's almost like a trustworthy factor. If you're overcharging somebody for $1,000 and they say, "Hey, if you can take $1,000 off, I'll do the job today," there's like an incongruence there. You're like, I'm starting this relationship off with a breach of trust. Like you
Yeah,
told
it's
me
a
this is
lot.
what you can do,
Yeah,
and then you said, "Oh, I got $1,000 left." I'd be like, "What else you got left in this pot?" It's almost like
yeah.
you're opening the door for, are
Free
you
flow.
gonna bait and switch me on something? Like it's
Yeah.
usually not apples to apples too when somebody has a competitor quote.
Well, and that's usually if they're really concerned about it, I'll say, like, all right, well, let's unpack this. Here's what I offered, and here's how I offered it. What are they offering that's different? Because for them to be $1,000 cheaper than us, something is not there.
Yes.
Um, and then some. Usually, we can figure it out by that. And sometimes they, if they're genuinely motivated by cost, if they don't answer, they'll say, "Hey, look, we had call the other day for gutters," and she's like, "Hey, we had two or three other companies, and they were cheaper than you, so we're going to use, we're going to go with somebody else." Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and for gutters, that there's really not a whole lot of wiggle room there. For as long as they're doing seamless gutters for the most part, it's all the same. Like we have a warranty and we have stuff like that, and I know our quality of work and we stand behind it. Um, but if someone's genuinely motivated by cost, it's really hard to kind of dig yourself out of that hole. And I just think it's save yourself the trouble and just don't get into a bidding war with a homeowner and another company. It's a lose lose for everybody.
Yeah, and I've noticed too, like people think, "Oh, I won that job." Like, "Oh, I won. We're going to make this much money." And then you get to that job and then you start, like you said, you look at your P&L, and at the end of the day, you're like made $500 on a job that took you
Yeah.
2 weeks. You're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. This isn't adding up for me."
Yeah, so we got out of that really early on. I just knew that that was a road that we didn't want to go down.
Yeah. Yeah, I've usually on jobs where you lose due to like pricing, you get that call down the road of like, "Hey, can you fix it? It wasn't done right." And then I'm like, "Well, I can fix it, but somebody damaged your siding or they damaged something and it's going to require a repair that I don't do. So it's going to cost you more." It's like buy once, cry once. And it's kind of like,
Yeah,
I don't want to deal with somebody who's just looking for the most economic solution to every problem. And I'm like, I want to be like a nice mid-tier vehicle at the car lot. I don't want to be that cheapest like Kia that you got there at the lot that's going to last you 30,000 miles and then you're going to have warranty issues.
yeah. We've had a couple of those calls, and I hate it. It really is. It breaks my heart because usually it's older people. Like when it comes to especially gutters, like with gutter golf, like the national brands. I don't want to give them free advertising on here, but you know who they are. They overcharge so much, and I've had people that have we've quoted our leaf protector and gutter installation, and they've gone with the national brand. And then they called us 2 or 3 years later and like, "Hey, our gutters are clogged." And we called them and they won't come back here and fix it. And they said that there's a warranty issue because the company that did it wasn't a licensed installer, so their warranty's void, or their warranty's void. And I remember this one specifically. They charged her like $22,500 for gutters, so for their protector package,
Yeah.
and our total cost was $2,250. So they were substantially more. I was like, we could have taken gutters off of your house and put them back on for the next 10 years, and still, we would still be in better shape.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, they just, they really sold me on it. They was, they scared me. They said that, because she was she was a widowed woman. She lived by herself, and she was, elderly, and they scared her, like, you can't come up here and clean these gutters. If you fall off, the gutters and you're trying to, clean them out, you're going to end up breaking your hip and no one's going to find you. Like, they really high pressure, just scary, just really piece of crap sales tactics. And it worked on her, unfortunately. So we had to come, take off their entire gutter system, put ours back on. I felt so bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, if you have any issues in the future, like with them clogging or, leaves, on or anything like that, call me. Like, I'm not going to give you any crazy story like, oh, an authorized, guy didn't do it. Like, no, I'm going to be out here the entire time for every step of the process.
Yeah.
I'll be on site when you're going to get up. So that way, exactly who's putting them on. And then if you have a problem, call me. This is my cell phone number. But that kind of goes back to being an owner operator. Like, I can pick and choose where I want to put myself. And for her, I knew I needed to be there for her because she was already, upset about getting hosed,
Yeah.
from a national brand. So yeah, and I hate it. And if you come back to me, I will answer the phone and we will sort it out. But yeah, I warned you, this was not going to be, good, but
Yep.
it doesn't make it still a tough pill to swallow.
Yep. Yep. And then, like you said, when you're like the owner, you can hop in and you're fresh and you're not like, well, sorry, I'm booked out on jobs for the
Yeah.
next 3 weeks. I can't visit you. You can say, hey, I got guys in the field driving revenue forward, and I'm here to essentially like do damage control if needed.
Yep.
And but yeah, I'm and to me it's like, yeah, we have competitors in our space too. They like that hard sale that like, hey, you need to close right now, like door to door in your face. And I'm like, generally if somebody's trying to really hard sell you, they don't want you to do any research on your own. They don't want you to figure it out. It's like all emotion, and it's probably the highest ticket.
Yeah, I don't like hard sales. Like, we don't do it over here. It really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Like, when somebody comes to your door and they're trying to put a hard sell on you, like the door-to-door salesman go, like, how does it make you feel? Okay, like it's usually you kind of get the ick.
Yeah.
So it's the same way as, like, I don't ever want to come off like a large part of what we do is sales, right? But
Yeah.
sales just has such a nasty connotation, and I don't want to be viewed as like, the pushy used car salesman who's trying to put, duct tape and Bondo on something just to get it out the door.
Yep.
If someone's trying to give you a high pressure sales on something that, especially like a crawl space, that's, 100, 100 or 1,500 square foot, you're probably looking anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on which route we're going and how bad it is.
Yeah.
So a $10,000 decision, that's not a high pressure. Like, I'm not gonna like, hey, it's $10,000, but if you sign today, it's 8. Like, okay, once again, you've knocked $2,000 off the price, so you are overcharging them to start with.
Yeah.
So I think that just the whole high pressure stuff, it doesn't work for us. I'll give, like, here's the estimate. It's good for, I think it's good. Our crawl space estimates are good for 15 days. And the only reason we put that caveat in there is if, our material prices go up. So like, Aprilaires, who we partner with for dehumidifiers, if they were to change their price tomorrow, from $1,000 to $1,100 or $1,500 to $1,600, we're not going to eat that price.
Right.
But you've got a 15-day window, and I have that relationship with them. It goes back to our strategic partnerships. If there's a price shift in the next 15 days, you're exempt from that. So if I tell you today, hey, it's going to be $5,000 for the entire thing, even if my cost goes up, on dehumidifiers, I've already submitted that ticket. So as long as you can answer me in that time, it gives you plenty of time to think about it. Yeah. And I usually, before we follow up and check on, check on homeowners with our estimates, I want to give them a couple of days to work it over, because usually it's a lot,
Yeah.
On the gutter cleaning side, not really. It's at most, we're, our average ticket for gutters is, $350. But we're anywhere from, $150 to, $500 on gutter cleaning. So that's generally an easier pill to swallow, but you hand somebody an estimate for crawl space work and it's, $7,500. That's a lot more to digest.
Yeah.
Specifically for something like on a crawl space, you don't see it every day, on your roof. If it's leaking, okay, you're going to throw $7,500 at a roof.
Yeah.
You're not going to throw $7,500 on your house. So you have to really justify the value add for them. Here's why it's important. And that's a big part of our brand, is education for the homeowners. Like, hey, look, it's not just going to be, here's the estimate, it's going to be this much to do it, it's this much to not do it. Here's what's wrong with your crawl space. Here's why it's a problem. Here's how we're going to fix it. And we're going to use these steps to fix it and to rectify the problem, to make sure it's not a problem going forward.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information that we give them on day one, that we kind of let sit and marinate for a couple of days. And then we follow up with them like, hey, look, you've got the estimate. What questions do you have? and then we go from there. And generally, I've felt like we've had a higher close margin with that approach versus, calling, sending somebody an estimate and the next day, like, hey, what are your thoughts? Like, you
Yeah.
got to give them a reason to want to do this because they're still having to spend their hard-earned money on something that they realistically do not see every day, and they don't know it's a problem because you just magically showed up and said, "Hey, this is a problem." Like you gotta expand on that.
Yeah, that's true. And then like you built that value in yourself as like you and I are kind of similar in the sense like, hey, we almost want to like partner with the homeowner. Hey, like your house is dirty, I can make that happen. It's just going to be like a transaction of money. And then they're like, oh, look how nice it looks. This is how much I paid for it. That was a great deal. Or the same deal with you. Like you give them information, you're not scaring them into making like a rash decision purely on emotion. You're giving them time to like process the data, and then you back up that data with, hey, like I'm the expert here because X, Y, and Z. And anytime you have a problem that's raised, I'm going to be here to answer it. And it like builds trust and credibility in yourself, where they have peace of mind of saying like, oh, if I spend $7,500 and something goes wrong, is somebody going to pick up the phone?
Yeah, that's really where we're at. Is we want to solidify ourselves as the expert in our field,
Yeah.
depending on whether it's gutter cleaning installation or the crawl space side or attic installation, whatever it is. I want to be the expert. So, and I've even had homeowners that have called me that like, hey, we're going to do this ourselves, but like, how should we do this and why are we doing this versus this? And like, I don't know, I'll walk them through it because at the end of the day, like, I genuinely care about what I do and I'm passionate about what I do. And if I can help somebody make their home better and safer, or get them over the transaction hump for real estate, because a lot of times gutters and crawl spaces will hold real estate transactions up for for small things on an inspection report.
Yeah, that's good.
So there's a lot of value add for what we do, but if you don't tell them how it's a value add, they don't know. So if
Yeah.
you're just specifically transactionally focused, you're not going to win as many. You'll win, you'll still win some, but I think we found it's more viewed as a transaction. Like, hey, look, you've done something, we paid you money, we'll see you next time. I want to
Exactly.
create a value add so that way you understand why this is important. And like I said, we've got really high brand awareness. I think that harkens back to how we approach things, that homeowners are more willing to say, hey, look, I would recommend this person because they took the time to explain every step of the process for us.
And essentially like nobody wants to be sold, so like we're all like our ears like we pretty much tune people out that are trying to hard sell us. But if you're literally just like being helpful and providing and like going to somebody and saying, hey, look, like we do these all the time, this is like my business, I recommend doing X, Y, and Z, and say they were trying to do it themselves, if you give them the information, they might realize how long and detailed the process is, and they'll start rationalizing it's worth paying him to do it right than me to try to do it myself, spend how many days and weekends to do it myself, and to not even do it right.
Yeah, we had a guy that he checked us on insulation one time, and we have a fantastic relationship with a supplier here for insulation. And I gave him our quote for installation. He called us back 2 weeks later. He's like, I messed up. I was like, what do you mean? And at this point, he's not a customer. I knew he wasn't a customer, but I still answered his phone call.
Yeah.
Like, so I went out to Lowe's and bought the installation, and I saved money because I saved about $100 from what you guys would have installed it for. And we had already removed the insulation. We were already in the crawl space doing the vapor barrier, but he wanted to do his installation. So
Yeah.
we'll remove it. So we removed the installation. All he had to do was install it. He said, I saw how quickly you guys had everything else done. You guys would have had the entire project done in a day, maybe 2 days. Because I was down there for 3 weekends cutting, fitting, and putting insulation up because I was itchy. My clothes, my clothes were itchy. I still feel like I smell the insulation.
Yeah.
And I only saved $100. And I said, I tried to tell you, like,
Yeah.
we have an incredible deal on insulation. And even that week we had a promotion with our supplier that it was even cheaper than it normally was. And if I get a deal like that, I will pass it on to my customer. Like, I'm not going to eat those savings. I'm going to pass on that because once it makes us look more attractive. If I can make a $1,500 job go to a $1,200 job, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
But he still price checked us and ended up, he saved money, but his opportunity cost for was a loss because he spent 3 weekends of his free time, in a crawl space cutting insulation.
Yep. We
And I
have
was
that
like,
happen
look,
so many times with pressure washing. It's like, oh, I can pressure wash. Absolutely, you can pressure wash, but
yeah, I
what's your
watched a
time
couple
worth?
YouTube videos. It's so easy.
Yeah, it's like, what's your time worth? And like the equipment that we have, we can do a $400 job in an hour, and people are like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. I'm like, why don't you try it with your 1 gallon a minute pressure washer, and you'll
Yeah,
spend an
you're
entire
supposed to
weekend, and then
compare.
call me back and spend the same money.
Yeah, your surface cleaner makes quick work of a driveway and sidewalks, and they're out there with a wand, and they've got strikes and streaks on it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't look great, and they're just and every time you come home from work, you're going to look at that driveway, and you're like, I should have just called Matt.
Yep. Yep. That's like the thing. It's like, hey, more power to you. I'm not gonna if you can buy a $300 pressure washer from the store and you're gonna call me back in 2 weeks when you're frustrated of spending your whole weekend, then it's
Yeah. Yeah, I've never, and we've helped a couple of homeowners like that have actually gone out and done it themselves, and we've helped them, and we've talked about doing like a coaching side of it, like to help people like a DIY coaching side. I'm not really ready to pull the trigger on it yet, but I've never had one of them once like go into business doing it, like they did it for themselves, like hey, and it looked great. But I called him. I was like, "You're not gonna, start competing against me." He goes, "Oh God, no." He goes, "This was
yeah.
awful. I hated it. I don't understand why this was your chosen profession."
Yep.
So yeah, I've never once lost a homeowner to me, like genuinely going out and helping them, and they've turned around and like done it themselves. I've had a couple guys that worked for us for a year or two, and they've started their own company, and irks me a little bit. But at the end of the day, like I can respect them trying to go do something for themselves. But it is what it is. It's part of the business.
Yeah, I mean, I've had similar instances where people they leave, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna have my own pressure washing business," but they don't understand like it's the business behind it that makes it successful. It isn't the technical work. I was like, you can pressure wash houses all day long, but you're gonna be like, I don't know how to get jobs. I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to do this. It's like there's a lot more to do than just the actual act of the service that we're providing to the customer. It's like the back end and all that stuff. Most people can't
Yeah,
do.
what we do is not rocket science. I tell homeowners and the guys that work for me all the time, like, look, there's nothing that we do here that is like technically hard. Like it's hard work, it's hard labor, but everything that we do here is a learned skill. Like I can teach anybody to do this, or anybody could theoretically teach themselves to do this with enough discipline. You could watch enough YouTube videos and practical knowledge. You could figure anything that we do out.
Yep.
But the difference is what makes us a successful company. And I've had guys that have worked for me and have seen enough of the business side of it. They're like, I can do what you do. And they've
Yep.
gone out and started their own thing. And they're successful initially because their initial price point was like, I'm going to be cheaper than you. Okay.
Yep. Go for it.
Because they know our price point. And it's like, and I've had him directly sell against me on jobs that he's beat me on. Like, I'll admit it, like he got me on a few jobs just because his margins are less than mine.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he doesn't have the equipment and the infrastructure to compete long term with us. And I got a couple calls the other day that he sent. He was like, "Hey, look, I just don't have the ladders for this, and I'm not getting up on a 3-story house.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do all this work to get the business, but if you don't really invest in the practical side and the business side of it to grow it the correct way, you're gonna end up either giving it up or pushing it back somewhere else."
Yep.
So yeah, I got a call the other day from a former employee. It was like, "Hey, look, I'm going to send you one." And then he was like, "Will you give me a referral fee?" I was like, "No, I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that."
That is what's
You,
funny too. Like I'll see that too. People are like, "Well, I'll pay you for my no, if you can't go, there's nothing that you're going to gain from like there's no value that you have over me if you can't get the job done.
yeah,
And a
you can't
customer
do it.
doesn't care. A customer says, "Well, these are my expectations. If you can't meet them, I'll go somewhere else."
Well, and it was funny. The homeowner asked me. He was like, "Do you do a lot of work with them?" And I was like, "He's a former employee." He's like, "Yeah, I called him, and like he's like, I can't. I can come out to take a look at it." Because I can't do the second story. I can do the first story, but I won't be able to do the second story. And the homeowner's like, "I don't want you to do half the house." Like, no, I don't. No, we're not
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I've got somebody who can do this." And he goes, "I've called 3 or 4 other gutter companies, and nobody either wanted to or can." I was like, there's a lot of people that clean gutters in the upstate, and honestly, a lot of pressure washers do, but a lot of them don't have the equipment or like to invest on the taller side. So like the commercial stuff, we get a lot of the commercial jobs just because we have big ladders.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
got 2 40-foot ladders. I've got a 50-foot ladder. All the way down to simple 14 like 10-foot A-frame ladders. I've got a ton of ladders, but ladders are super expensive.
Yeah.
Um, and I've had homeowners check me on that before. I'm like, "Hey, look, it's 350 to do your house." And like, "Well, I'll just go buy a ladder for that." It's like, okay, you go to Lowe's and find a ladder for $350 that'll
Yeah.
do the back of your house, and then in 2 hours I get a phone call like, "Hey, when can you come?"
Yeah, because they look at the ladder and just like a 20-foot ladder is $1,000.
Yeah, like a 40-foot ladder with a standoff on it. I mean, like we even got ours on sale. I think we still spent $800 on one of our fiberglass 40-foot
Yeah.
ladders.
Yeah.
But also, like, even if you do have a 40-foot ladder, if you don't have the truck, if you're doing everything out of, like an SUV, and you've got like a little giant ladder, which is great for doing small houses,
Yeah.
you know, a 40-foot ladder folded up is still 22 feet long almost.
Yeah.
Like I've got a big truck with a big commercial ladder rack on it, and I don't drive around with all these ladders because I think it looks cool. No, I get awful gas mileages and I can't go through
Yeah.
drive-throughs.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
have it on there so I can go to work.
Definitely like going to
Uh,
Chick-fil-A with a ladder on top and you're like, I can't
uh,
turn.
I know. I'll go in there and I'm like, I've measured. I know exactly how tall it is now. But it was like it was nervous because you're out working on the road. Like I don't love to have to go fast food, but if I have to, I will.
Yeah.
I'm always like, am I going to hit here or not? Because some drive-throughs are smaller than others, and then sometimes I'll get through the ordering part and it says it's 8 foot 6 inches, and then the hood over the window is not 8 foot 6 inches.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, like almost to the point of like when somebody says, "Oh, like it's not rocket science." I was like, "You have a kitchen in your house, yet you still go to a restaurant." So what does that
Yep.
tell you? And
Yeah.
it's like
Sometimes it's
we're
just
service based.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like
That's
what
a good.
it's like why do people spend $40 for food out at a restaurant when they can make probably a better quality meal for less at their house?
You'll go out and steak is expensive at the restaurant. Like people will turn their nose up at steak that's $6 a pound,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll go out to a restaurant and then you'll get it for $50 a piece.
And they covered in butter
Uh,
and parsley.
yeah, and you're paying the higher markup because it's the service.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to be better at the restaurant, but a lot of times you can still make great steak at home. Like it's not hard.
Yeah.
Once you get it, it's a learned skill. You could do it at home. You just don't want to.
Exactly. Yeah, that's but yeah, I think like you and I both have similar sales processes where we're not hard selling people. We're not like putting the fear of God in them. We're essentially just, hey, this is what it is, laying everything out, laying out all the details. And then we're saying, like, I'm the trusted expert here. Like,
Yeah.
we're providing a clear roadmap where they have a decision of, do I want to figure it out myself? Do I want to waste my whole weekend? Or do I want to trust this professional guy who he's not trying to hard sell me? So he must be plenty busy and he's an authority in the space.
Yeah. I think you create value by trusting yourself and trusting the process. And there's, granted, there's plenty of jobs that we've lost because of that, they're wanting to get what we do for bottom dollar. And that's just not how we do it. And there's plenty of times that another company will come swoop in and grab it because they can just be cheaper than us. And I've had other companies go as far as like name drop me specifically, which I have no idea who they are. And they'll come in like, yeah, I can do everything Trevor can do for this much. And I'm like, well, that's wild because I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
But hey, if that's what he says, then that's fine. Like good luck. And
Yep.
they're like, well, wait a minute, hold on. Like sometimes if you're so quick to dismiss it and they're like, well, wait, what do you know that I don't know? I was like, I don't know who that is. Like I specifically can't tell you how their work is. I know how my work is. I also know that, if something goes wrong and 2 months down the road, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, we're still going to be here,
Yeah.
right? We've been here for 7 years, and you don't last for 7 years and go through COVID and all these other things. Like you don't have a company that lasts this long by screwing people over and pulling one over people. Like
Yep.
we have a fantastic reputation because of treating people right and doing what we say, how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it. And I don't ever back end costs off a budget. The last thing I'm going to do is tell you we're going to do a job for $1,500. Like, hey, we ran into this expense. And obviously sometimes it happens, but if I can eat costs and something like that, I will. But also we're very, very thorough in our consultations. I try to not miss things like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the worst things that we can do is have a contracted price for X amount of dollars and then turn around and have to ask the homeowner,
Yeah.
hey,
No.
we need more money because we found this. Now, sometimes it's completely unavoidable. Like for gutters, if we're doing a gutter repair, gutter replacement, and all the fascia board is rotten, and sometimes you can't really see it until you get the gutters off.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pull the fascia board off or the fascia wrap, whatever it is. If that fascia board behind the gutters is rotten or the soffit's rotten, sometimes you can't see it until you pull that fascia wrap and the gutters off. And it's like, hey, look, here's what it is. Or same thing with roofing.
Yeah.
I can't see the wood underneath. I can see it a little from the attic. But, if I get up on top of your roof and we start doing the tear off and I've got, 5 sets of plywood sheets that are completely rotten, I've got to replace it.
Yeah.
I can't put it back on a rotten plywood. We have to fix it. Here's
Right.
what the cost is.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's okay, but I want to be very thorough in our process. I don't want to back in costs. I think that looks trashy.
I hear you there. And I think it's just like, hey, being transparent with people and then like, hey, showing value is like, hey, I'm problem solving on the fly here. Like, this
Yep.
is like, I have your best interest at heart because I care more about being in business for the next 7 years as I've been for the past 7 years than to make a little bit of money on your house. And like,
Yeah,
I'll do
I'll
that too.
take
I'll
a
like,
$200 hit.
yeah, I'll like zoom out on people and I'm like, all right, you have a $300 or $400 job. I don't care to like ruin my reputation when we do 1,000 of these jobs a year over the
Hmm.
and then we're in business and we're growing our business. Like there's bigger fish to fry than this little problem. It's almost like trying to like reframe issues that people are like in the moment they're like this is the biggest issue in the whole wide world and I'm like no, like
Yeah.
it's like we got this.
Like specifically in your jobs, like whenever we get a lead from you, they're time sensitive. One, because usually if somebody calls us, they need us to do the gutters first, so that way you guys can come through and do your job.
Yeah,
Uh, and so I'm having to estimate quickly. So we'll use our software, whether it's Eagle View or Google, Google Earth, whatever. So I've got roofing software that I can pull and I can measure gutters pretty accurately. And I'll call them and I'm like, look, here's our numbers. I'm like, well, how do you know? It's like, well, I can pull satellite images. I can pull property
yeah,
data. I own a roofing company. I've got lots of options.
yeah,
So I'll pull the roofing report and I'll get a readout of the gutters, and it's pretty accurate. And I'll tell them, like, look, if their house measures 200 linear feet of gutters, I'm like, hey, look, it's going to be about $200. If I get out there and I completely miss something and it's an extra 75 feet and it should be 275, like I'm going to eat that. I'll tell them,
yeah,
like, look,
yeah.
if I get out there and I tell you right now it's $200 and it measures under, all right, we'll drop it down. If I get out there and it measures over, I'm not gonna. I'll eat that. I'm not gonna come back at you for another $50 or
That's
75
true.
bucks.
Yeah, that's
And a lot of times I feel like that really helps win them over. Look, I'm not here to, especially with the gutters. You're gonna have them as a repeat customer if you do the right thing from day one.
yep,
So hey, look, instead of being 375, you're $300, and you're $300 next year and the year after that, unless we have any crazy price increases. But and us cleaning gutters for 5 years, we haven't changed our prices because it's just labor. It's a fixed cost.
yep, yep.
So we're not changing our price structure. And for the most part, people that we cleaned on day one back in 2020, their rate is still the same, if not cheaper, because we give them repeat customer discount.
Yep, no doubt. Yeah, that's a lot of good nuggets. We're at like an hour and 12 minutes. You got anything you want to say or you want to wrap it up or
We can wrap it up.
yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't want to hold you up all day if need be. So,
No, you're good. Yeah, whatever. If you got any other questions, we can start wrapping it up.
but yeah, I mean, I think building a brand on like trust, transparency is vital to like long-term growth and like referral business. And that's how you and I operate. Like the biggest thing I think when people try to hard sell and they're selling like and they're not like congruent with their true self and they're just kind of being a dirtbag to a customer, they have customer service and operations nightmares. And that's one thing they don't understand because like, oh, I hired a sales rep. This is how much money he's generating me. They compartmentalize that guy. So his job is just to push as much revenue as possible. And then like when you're doing the operations and you're managing it, it's like this is a nightmare. And then
Yeah.
expectations aren't met because a lot of times people overhype expectations and it just becomes a dumpster fire. So like I found it easy, like how you and I both do it with like that value add, no pressure. Like people are just attracted to us, and then like it's more of a seamless transaction of business.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think it's really hard to come back from that, like if you do it the wrong way. So yeah, we have a customer first focus, so that way, like if we can, obviously we're a business, we have to turn profits and generate revenue to stay in business. But if you take care of the customers and the homeowners, the rest takes care of itself. So yeah, take care of the customer first, and then if you can turn a profit at the end of it, then that's great. But
yeah,
ideally here we're problem solvers. We're here to solve your problem, and obviously there's a transactional fee in the back end of it, but the whole point, first and foremost, is you have a problem, we're going to solve it, and here's how we're going to do it.
yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, where can people find you? If they've been listening to your show and they're like, hey, I have a crawl space that needs help. Like, where's the best way to reach out to get gutter cleaning and uh, crawl space work done?
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Vaporlock Crawl Space or at Vaporlock SC. You can also Google us and find us on the internet, on our Google My Business page at Vaporlock Crawl Space Solutions.
Sweet. But yeah, appreciate you hopping on for the fourth
Oh, I
episode here.
appreciate you having me. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's one of those things we could talk forever. So I'm almost like, all right, I got to cut it off. Hour and
I
15.
know.
Be the longest show by 15 minutes. Is awesome.
When you ask me how long do you have, I was like, well, I could say 30 minutes, but you and I could end up talking forever.
I know, I know. I'm like, thank God I pay for the professional version of Zoom here. I would have been cut off like an hour ago.
Yeah.
But cool. Yeah, if that's everything, I'm gonna drop the outro here, and then if you guys need any work, make sure to reach out to Trevor.
Appreciate it,
So
Matt.
thanks for being on the show. All right, see ya.